On this episode of AV Week, what happens when your big ginormous scoreboard goes down? Crestron pulls the curtain back on chip shortages. And what is the appetite for AV over IP? All that and more. Next on AV Week.
The network for the AV industry.
What are you listening to?
This
is AV.
This
is AVNation.
This is AVNation.
This is AV Week, episode 577, recorded Friday, September 9th, 2022. Transparency is king.
Support for AVNation is brought to you by
Sure, sound extraordinary.
And by Atlas IED, innovative audio solutions for every business environment. And by
Atlona, the go-to provider for AV signal distribution and control in corporate, higher education, and residential spaces.
This is AV Week, your weekly wrap-up of audio-visual news and information. My name is Tim Albright. I am your host. With us to discuss the news and information we have gathered this week, first and foremost, Willie Franklin from Franklin Event Services. Welcome, sir.
Thank you, Tim. Good to be back.
Good to see you. And Mr. James King from UNLV School of Medicine. Welcome, sir.
Thank you, Tim, for having me.
Absolutely. We are recording this on the 9th of September. I mentioned that because there's a whole lot of stuff happening in September and October. Crestron's got their Modern Work Summit in a couple of weeks, in addition to Masters, and then CEDIA comes right after that. So if you're bouncing around in the industry and going to any of these events, make sure that you huddle up with our colleagues, take some pictures, and put it out on the socials. That way, Chris Netto knows what's happening. So a little more of a joke. First story comes to us from our friends over at AV Network. Honestly, it could have been written by a whole number of folks. But Crestron sat down, Dan Feldstein, the CEO, as well as Dan Brady, the COO, and Mr. Brad Hensey, the Vice President of Marketing for Crestron, all sat down in a handful of town halls and addressed supply chain issues, addressed some of the things that they're facing. In addition to, they answered questions, and that's one of the things that kind of took me by surprise. Certainly understand the presentation, certainly understand the town hall, but the thing that really kind of struck me as transparent, to be honest about it, guys, is that they sat down and they took questions from a number of sectors. One of the presentations they did was focused on the residential market. One of the presentations they did in the town halls they did was certainly focused on the commercial market, and they actually split that up into two different ones. But I want to say something here or repeat something that Mr. Feldstein said, quote unquote, "We truly care. We're taking every possible step possible to navigate through this climate, from physically redesigning products to finding new ways to procure components and creating alternative solutions, even if that means using our competitors' products." Put that pin in that for a second. We're committed to getting through this, that every single order ships, and we are committed to getting through this together. Willie, I'm going to start with you on this. That was, to me, not only transparent, but it was remarkable for a manufacturer to say, we're even willing to use our competitors' products to make sure that our clients and our customers are taken care of. Not for nothing, Crestron is 100% a sponsor of AVNation. So are several of their competitors. All of them are having issues on some level right now. But how is Crestron and honestly others, how are their handling of the supply chain issues? How is that impacting the AV users, the colleges and the educators?
Thanks, Tim. I first have to say that Crestron's move was very illuminating. And, we've all heard the old adage that cash is king, but transparency in this marketplace is cash equal king. And to have that level of transparency, to own the fact that you're trying to deliver, but you're up against a wall. Personally, I kind of wanted to cheer. I'm too large of a man to be a good cheerleader, but truly I wanted to cheer when I read the article, when I saw that level of disclosure on the part of Crestron's leadership. There are so many of us who struggle or basically are challenged to meet the needs of our clients out there, whether it's in the consumer realm, whether it's in the residential, commercial realm, particularly in higher ed, though. When you can't deliver, it breaks hearts on both sides, the seller as well as the client. But to be able to have that sit-down conversation with your client, as Crestron has done, really, because we're their clients, right? And concretely share what their plans are, what their actions will be, what their deliverables will be, and to recognize that they cannot control the marketplace as we think about the supply chain. More to the point, to break it down to a granular level, when we talk about a product that may have 2,500 parts, and those 2,500 parts may come from 250, as they cited, different suppliers. That's a real world scenario that is easy for people to recognize and appreciate. So when you start talking delays, when you explain what's behind the delay, I think people get it. It doesn't mean that they're not going to pester you every single moment of the day or every week and ask, hey, when can I get that? But again, going back to what Crestron has done, which is to take a strong leadership position when we talk about disclosure, when we talk about really debugging or demystifying the supply chain fiasco, and being honest and saying we really don't know how long this will go on, but it is getting better. So I hope that kind of brings it home for a little bit of the conversation and answering that question.
No, I think it does. I really do. James, same kind of question. Willie has recently has recently left the education space, but you're still right in the middle of it, James. So how is this impacting? How these companies are handling the shortages? How is that impacting folks on campuses and universities?
It's impacting us hard. That's the thing is, and this is a conversation I've had with integrators multiple times. Classes start when classes start. We're not a Fortune 500 company. We're not a bank or even a small commercial or even resi where, I can't get this gear. Let's push this project back 6, 7, 8 months. Classes starts when classes start. We need to have partnerships with companies like Crestron and these other manufacturers who can go, all right, let's come up with a solution so we can get your classes going. Because when you have 100, 200 students rolling in, you can't go, oh, I'm sorry, we can't teach you because we have delay in the equipment. They're coming in, they're coming to learn, and we need to achieve that. I would like to add, I agree with Tim on the transparency here, and it was very nice. And folks who know me, I actually run a back-end Slack channel that's private to higher ed folks. During the higher ed town hall that Crestron had, that chat was going off a lot of different ways. But what was really nice, what I found refreshing that Crestron did was, as Tim said, they took questions and it was live. Because we had questions in our back channels. We submitted it and they answered it on air. And I have to say, that was great.
Yeah, that was a bit of the playing without a net that I was surprised about, quite frankly, right? I've been a part of a number of Crestron events over the years. I've moderated some. I've done some fireside chats with them over the years, and in most of the time, right? They're not scripted all the time, but most of the time they are rather scripted. Have taken questions in the past, but typically from a live audience. This was more from a webinar type, basically, right? Where anybody that's kind of logged in can ask a question. And they literally, they really did answer. So yeah, absolutely. Let's move on to this one, because I do have a couple things I want to get to here on this week. This one kind of goes into the first story about Crestron and the chip shortage, kind of goes into this one. And that's from AV Magazine, talking about Audinate. Audinate has unveiled entire support for Dante-enabled video through Domain Manager. Domain Manager, the version specifically is version 1.4. That version there is giving people the ability to really kind of fully embrace the Dante-enabled video. I'm going to start with you, James, on this though. When it comes to the AV over IP, and some of this is, right, one of the products that Crestron's having issues with is NVX, which is their AV over IP. Some Dante chips aren't being shipped as well, so they're having issues supplying to their manufacturers. When you guys look at the AV over IP infrastructure today, the market today, and in the environment of these supply chain issues, is there still an appetite for that, or I guess what is the appetite for that, and how are we solving that? Both in the corporate but also in the higher ed space.
Is there an appetite? Yes. How are we solving it? Software. Dante is doing a good job with that, and people know I've been following Dante for a while. I think they're really became the staple of audio over the network, routing, handling it, and now they're in video. I've been watching their video, and I became almost a fanboy at Infocom. Is when I went over, I wanted to go talk to the AV tweets, Frank Paticala and them, Alicia. So I went over to talk to him, but I saw what Audient was doing with Dante Video at their booth. Anyone I could grab on the floor, I was showing them and taking them over there because I saw it was a very cutting edge. I wouldn't say cutting edge, but very refreshing what they were doing. And this is something I've been watching and monitoring and waiting for a while. So I think that's really what's coming in. The issue is, especially in higher ed, is making sure that the price comes to where we are, it's feasible. I mean, right now it's cheaper to throw in the black boxes into our classrooms than to do AV over IP. But I don't think that's going to be that way for long.
Well, the same question here is where is that appetite headed, especially in this environment of supply chain issues?
Tim, I think the appetite is just growing. I'm just a little bit beyond 30 days of leaving the higher ed framework and working in that arena, and now more the private sector as an operator of a DJ and event services business. But I can honestly say the clients that I've worked with thus far and have been working with certainly have an appetite for that video over IP. Right now I have 2 clients that we're looking to live stream a couple of events, and thank goodness we have all the hardware currently in place. But what I see happening is we've kind of become used to being able to grab a cell phone and live stream something from one location to another and allow a ton of people to join. And that seems to hop right into the next framework of thought, right? So now you're in the corporate environment, and if your cousin could stream that video of the little kid's birthday party and 15 relatives from all over the U.S. were able to join, why can't I, as a doctor in this corporate environment, have this discussion with my team, and that discussion is delivered all to partner medical facilities that are part of this conglomerate network, if you will. Or we look at the entertainment industry, and by entertainment I think about a recent event that I hosted at a local casino. You have all of those various rooms who would like to take part in that central event, that main event. So it becomes a real hunger to be able to push video and audio real time, very little latency, to all of those locations, essentially all of those clients or all of those audiences within that building environment. So I truly see that whole AV over IP industry growing. And certainly as we think about what we've been kind of pushed into, thinking how we responded to COVID, from an AV management, staging, AV integration standpoint, that really became a must for business continuity to continue to be able to connect, right, and deliver that content to audiences wherever you're at. I guess the short answer is we've become so accustomed as consumers of technology that I think part of the hunger is what's next. Why can't it be easier? Why can't I have it now? It's almost become a fast food item, and maybe that's underselling it or overselling it. But I don't know. User expectations no longer see the big hurdles of bringing technology to them anytime, anywhere. They want it, and they want it now.
So, James, and then Willie, either of you jump in on this. Something that Willie just said there is the barrier to entry is perceived as X, right? The barrier of entry is perceived to be lower, and I 100 years ago, right, when I was still programming pretty badly, but still programming. I remember a story of a CEO coming in and being able to. This is 10, 12 years ago, guys. So don't at me. This is before the barcode click share. But they could take their iPhone. Actually, their kid is how they put it. Their kid could take their iPhone and they could throw a video up on their screen in their TV. Why can't I do that in my boardroom, right? And at the time, there wasn't a mechanism unless you went and you got an Apple TV, right? And you put it on the network, which caused other issues with the net admins, right, and the security folks. But when the CEO says it, that there's it darn near better get done, right? And then you went into other issues like well, whose account is it and all this jazz. But we were finding consumer ways to do it because the consumer industry is who was doing it before the commercial, right? Before the secure part of it and all this jazz. So is the bar really lower? Is the barrier to entry really lower? Or is that just the perception of the people using it?
Yeah, it's definitely a perception. I've heard that my 14 years in higher ed is I can do this at home. Why can't I do it here? And you don't. The consumer stuff is made to be simple and to work, but it doesn't have the security. It doesn't have the functionality, the enterprise, the scalability that we all need in our environment to be able to support this remote management. Going back to Willie's example of streaming your kid's birthday party. Yeah, that's great. But if you have a hiccup and Granny can't watch it, she's going to accept that risk. But if a CEO is giving a keynote speak and there's a hiccup, no one's going to accept that as a okay failure. So the perceived barrier is there. The support barrier we know is not there, and it's much higher. And we need to educate our users to show them that the consumer gear is not to the standard as a commercial gear because of security, because of reliability, because of scalability, that they come accustomed to from the support that we give them. But agree, when the CEO asks for it, you make it work. But that's the thing is, we are very good at making it work.
James, I could not agree more. You said it very well. Kudos. And, for me, I try to use, very common analogies to explain very complicated technology. That barrier to entry and support is chaotic because your home end user definitely wants to do in the office what they're doing at home. I can tell you concretely of turning on my television one day and seeing my neighbor's church service on my TV because he connected to my TV with his laptop instead of his own. We just happen to have identical models. You can't do that in a corporate environment, right? If you're that CEO and you're giving that presentation in a medical facility and all of a sudden adjacent businesses are picking up your feed, you've got FERPA issues, you've got HIPAA issues, it gets nasty, you get into risk management very, very quickly. It becomes very costly. I think the simplest way I try to frame things for people to understand is, I use the example of electricity. You walk into your room, you reach around, you flip your light on, your light comes on. In your mind, it's easy. It's just a light switch and the light comes on. For those in the industry, they've got to figure out load capacity. They've got to figure out distance of transmission line. They've got to figure out whether it's going to be hydroelectric, whether it's going to be wind, solar, nuclear. Beyond that, even if they have enough money to buy enough transmission lines, they've got to get from point A to point B. How many jurisdiction and municipalities do they now need to get approval? How many easements must they cross to get electricity to your home? It becomes extremely complicated, and it takes years to make it happen. But at the end of the day, you come home, you flip the switch, and it's just on. So our role is to understand at the granular level what it takes to get it done. And it's complicated because with all of that technology, we then have to boil it down to just a common conversation without the technical jargon that makes sense, without insulting a person's intelligence, right? And it is not an easy role. But apparently we do it darn well because the expectations are there every single day and they continue to grow.
See, if you guys would just slack off a bit, the expectation would be lower. Do not take advice from me, kids. Do not take advice from Tim. All right, here we go. Last story comes to us from AVNation and our parent company, CTI. A couple weeks ago at SoFi Stadium, the Cowboys and Chargers were playing, and let's just say they had a issue. From the official Twitter from SoFi Stadium, we experienced an outage with our internal broadcast system. We are resetting and expect all systems to be up and running shortly, quote unquote. So if you don't know what we're talking about, it is the big, ginormous Samsung display that is in the middle of SoFi Stadium, which is the home of the Rams and the Chargers. Ginormous, gorgeous scoreboard. Well, it was blank for 3 quarters. We're recording this on the 9th of September, the weekend of opening kickoff for the NFL season. And just so I've said this out loud, the Rams lost last night. That could not come more times, just in general, as someone from St. Louis, and go Bears. So we interviewed a bunch of really smart folks and said, okay, how do you prevent that? What happens if this happens again, right? So make a plan. Right? Have spares on hand when it comes to that. Protecting your system from anomalies. All sorts of really good stuff. Really, we'll start with you on this. This is a facility's, and quite frankly, an integrator's and a user's worst nightmare, right? You're getting ready to go into a game, a facility, whatever, and your system, your big marquee system goes down. What do you do then?
Well, you don't panic and scream, oh my God, what's happening? I'm a strong believer that 2 is 1 and 1 is none. So having spares is critical. But realistically, no one's going to have a spare Jumbotron or a spare video wall. In my case, I had a major video wall go down during an event where our university president was speaking. So the spares for me means that I have additional adapters on hand, converters, processors, just a lot of the granular hardware that powers that big infrastructure. Seldom have I found that that major piece has gone down itself. It may be something as simple as a power supply. Those can be relatively inexpensive to have in quantity on hand as backup. Having an uninterruptible power supply on all of those devices is critical because we never know when brownout conditions, voltage drops, or spikes are going to occur. And those could be minor, but they can cause major triggering device or triggering incidents, such as system reboots, right, or system hang-up. If that data gate doesn't open, everything goes dead and it just freezes because it doesn't know what to do. Again, it's very simple, but the end result is very problematic. It's not good for one's nerves, I'll put it that way. So 2 is 1, 1 is none, always having backup. With the exception of large pieces of infrastructure like that.
Yes, certainly.
We can only hope that warranty is good, and by good, I mean real good.
Yeah, and so the story come out. Let me just say this too. That system, and talked with a couple of folks that were involved in that. It is one of the most, if not the most complicated system. Not even talking about the Samsung display, right? We're talking about the back end, right? The nuts and bolts, the pipes that feed that thing. 10%, top 10% of complicated systems in the world when it comes to broadcast and game day experiences. And if that one can go down, all y'all's can go down, right? It's Friday afternoon. I'm getting ready to head to my kid's high school football game this evening. That one could go down if SoFi could go down, right? So I'm not saying anybody did anything wrong. It was a freak accident, and it just happened, which is kind of leading us to this conversation: is what do you do when that does? James, same kind of question. What sort of backups, and like Willie says, one is none in this instance.
Willie covered it great about having the spare gear. I think the most important thing I took from that article, which is the number one, is have a plan, make a plan. And what's key to that is not only do you make a plan, but you work the plan. I kind of sum this up as a story my mom told me. My mom's a retired teacher, and we all know that grade schools and even some higher ed, they run fire drills, but the administration knows when fire drills are. They plan them. Well, in my mom's school years ago, there was an actual fire. Teachers saw it, pulled the fire alarm. Every student, every kid walked out as planned. Administration ran around like chickens with their heads cut off because they didn't know. They're like, this is not a fire drill. What do we do? Because it wasn't planned. They didn't have a plan, and they had a plan, but they didn't practice. They didn't follow their plan. The moment happened, and they freaked out. So having a plan and being able to go, okay, this is my next step when A drops out and B drops out. I hear it all the time on Formula One racing. You'll hear it be like, all right, we're going to plan C, or plan C is not working. We're going to plan E. Yeah, we don't know what those plans are, but the team does. You got 26 letters in the alphabet. You can have 26 plans, or you can go hexadecimal and expand it even more. So definitely have multiple plans and have multiple ways of doing things and recovering.
I'm going to hang on to the hexadecimal piece. I love that reference. When it really gets bad and you go hexadecimal to expand your options. Man, I love that. Great deal.
There you go.
Just for the record, if I ever hear James say a hexadecimal, I'm running the opposite direction. Okay, just so you all understand, that's where I'm going to be. All right. Thank you all so much. Willie Franklin from Franklin DJ and Event Services. Thank you, sir. How do people connect with you?
They can reach me at franklindjservices@gmail.com.
All right, very good. And Mr. King, thank you, sir. How do people connect with you?
You Google me on the internet. I'm everywhere. Anything with HEPMA, higher ed, co-host, ambassador programmer. Again, you Google me, you'll find me.
All right, very good. For Tim Albright, do not follow me on the Twitters because, as I mentioned before, I am an unabashed Bears fan, so I will be complaining for the next 3 or 4 months. It is what we do. Although they did reveal a very nice stadium concept, so we'll see where that goes. Hopefully they'll get they'll get some cool stuff. But go by the website if you would please, AVNation.tv. That's AVNation.tv. You will find this program and a host of others. A couple things to point about the podcast. Taylor Moore has a brand new Ask the AV Profession. And we are sort of secretly, not so secretly, working on reboots of a couple different programs, including a higher ed program by the name of EdTech. It has been on the shelf for a minute, and I am quite excited to see where that goes. So check all that out and more at avnation.tv. That's avnation.tv. Thanks so much for listening. Thank you so much for watching. That's all the time we have for AV Week.